I would like all of you to first understand what is trustless systems. What are those? So trust systems versus trustless systems. So let's get into that. So you see the graphics at the top here, and it shows you world's biggest data breaches, right? And then at the bottom, you see a graphics which tells you that 35% all the dollars were printed in 8 months, certain 8 months, and which was happened to be the last year, right? So what is going on here? You trust somebody with something. You trust government that they're going to do due diligence in giving you medium of exchange that is holding value on its own, right? And that trust is broken, right? So if you see the graphics at the bottom, that trust is broken because now a year later, you see that prices are going up of things. And 1 year later, when money was being printed, nobody realized that it will happen to this extent, right? And then at the top, you give all your data to these providers. You think they're managing this data really well for you, but then they do all kinds of stuff with your data. So I'm only talking about data breaches here, but they sell your data, they do partnerships with other providers, whatnot, and a lot of times they don't ask you. So history is full of big players doing that, right? So trust doesn't work at all times, right? So the whole basic foundation of crypto is that we need to go to a trustless system where we don't put power in the hands of a centralized authority. And the power is actually distributed across the ecosystem, right? So for example, banks. So if you go to a bank, if you borrow money from them, they charge you, let's say 4%. When you put money with them, they give you only 1%, maybe, for saving accounts, much less and all that. So they are making money just by being in the middle, right? So that's the first concept to be understood, that crypto is enabling a trustless world. And that doesn't mean that trustless world is not to be trusted for doing the job, flawlessly. It's just the terminology that it does not require a central party to be trusted, right? So if you operate in trust-based environment, there are a lot of things that go wrong, right? So you heard about monopolies, right? So there's one key player holding majority of the market and then can swing the market the way they want, right? So it kills innovation. The benefits don't go to many deserving parties. There are frauds and security breaches, as we said. So all of these points, are characteristics of a trust-based system, right? So just understand that, and I don't want to go into, whether trust-based systems are bad, totally bad, because, they work. And I am personally not an extremist or, maximalist who would say, let's go 100% trustless. But I think this concept is very, very important to be understood, that it is a very significant part of crypto, right? So now let's talk about crypto as a whole. So a year ago, a lot of people, I used to talk to, when you say crypto, they would think of Bitcoin, right? And it was natural because Bitcoin was the first one to grab everybody's attention. And right now there are more than probably 1 million coins out there. The thing to be understood here is that if somebody says, I understand Bitcoin, I understand crypto, it's almost like saying that I understand Hotmail, which was mailing software that started long back. I think we all can relate to. I understand internet because I do Hotmail, right? It's just that small. So Bitcoin is that small in the whole scheme of crypto, right? So crypto is not a good word. The real word I would use is Web 3.0. So it's not about really Bitcoin or cryptocurrency alone. Crypto is all about taking the current version of web, the way it is, to the next evolution, and probably the biggest one we have ever seen. It is almost like Web 1.0, again. So you guys might remember Web 1.0 when it came, you could probably only read the information what was published to you, right? So Web 1.0 was all about, hey, let's push the information. Let's have a place where people can go and find information. So you can publish a document everybody can read. You can publish, pictures, whatnot. So it was one-way push. Web 2.0 brought in this collaboration aspect. So you're not only looking at information, you're participating in the information as well. So it made it interactive. So Web 1.0, totally central. I want you to, see this information. Web 2.0, okay, I publish this information. Now you can collaborate with me or, other folks on my platform or other entities on my platform. Now Web 3.0 is really going to take that to next level where it is going to decentralize the power. So in Web 2.0, you have, for example, Facebook. In Web 3.0, you will have probably mines. And like I have a disclaimer here, I'm not recommending any token to be bought. I'm going to talk about a lot of tokens which are doing real great stuff, but not investment advice, right? So Web 3.0 setup, it could be mines. So mines, nobody runs mines. People like us collaborate on that system, and that system works without anybody owning it, right? So we publish information, we control our own data, nobody can sell our data, right? So that is Web 3.0, and it works very well with AI and cloud computing because those are assumed as the very foundation of Web 3.0. So Web 3.0 is all about decentralizing all the controls that big players have, like banks, the social websites, games, whatever, everything under the sky. So just want you guys to understand that crypto, when we talk crypto, is a very loose term. We are really talking Web 3.0, basically open economy where people can do business with each other without existence of central parties like banks or Facebooks or other things. So from here, I want to explain quickly the concept of blockchain. So what's going on, how all that happens. Basically, nobody owns databases in the open system that we're talking about. So databases are scattered across the world, and everybody has equal powers to kind of have a say in that. So if you think about blockchain, it has a database, and that database is not like a typical database we understand, like Oracle having tables. This database is in terms of blocks, and those blocks are connected with each other. So the reason it is that way is that in Oracle database, database we are familiar with, in, I would say, Web 2.0, non-decentralized economy, are the databases where you can go update record. So let's say, somebody submitted one data row, you can go and update that data row. It depends on who has the access, but somebody has master keys and can update it, right? Now, blockchain, the way that database works is you can only add a block. You cannot do anything to previous blocks. So what it does to the database is it makes it immutable. So any transaction or records that were put on the blockchain, nobody can update them. So basically, nobody can fiddle with the data that has gone into a blockchain. You can only add a block and say, okay, that transaction that was added earlier, now is updated here, right? So it's that kind of inclusively, happening in the blockchain at all times. So there is a database, and then there are nodes, right? So in typical non-blockchain environment, what happens is you have data centers where your databases are placed, centralized location, all the tables are there, and everything happens over there. Now in blockchain world, what happens is people like you and me run nodes on their computers, right? So obviously you need better infrastructure to run something like a Bitcoin blockchain node, or any other frontline blockchains node. But that's the concept, that I can start a Bitcoin node. So basically what it will do, it will copy the latest version of this ledger, or the database on my own node. It's a running software. So every participant in the network, every participant is basically people like us, they have a copy of the database, and then they basically validate any incoming transaction. So a transaction happens, somebody buys something, sells something, updates something, stores something, whatever. Transaction could be anything. Those transactions are vetted by people like us. And when I say people like us, the software running on our nodes, and there is a consensus built about whether those transactions are fully vetted, they're accurate, and they're collected, and a new block is added to the blockchain. Now, when you add a new block to the blockchain, you get rewarded for it. So I can run a Bitcoin node, which obviously will have a copy of Bitcoin database and all of that. And if I add a block on the chain, then I will get rewarded in Bitcoins, right? So there are certain number of Bitcoins that I will get for adding it on the node. So it's a self-sufficient system. You don't require any central body to really manage the database, or maintain the database and things like that. Now, if that's the case, why won't anybody run a node and add blocks? Because if you get Bitcoin, which is now going, I think, at around $37,000, everybody want to do it. But then it's very hard for you to do it, because as a design, it is very, very computation intensive. So when there is a next block being put, there are millions of nodes competing for it, right? And there's only one of them that will be able to put a block on the chain, right? So that has been achieved by making it highly, highly computing intensive. So you have to really solve a puzzle, mathematical puzzle, each of the nodes, to compete for that block to be put on the chain, right? So that, some basic concepts I just want to make sure that you guys understand. So people who are running those nodes, people like you and me, little bit of investment can run the node, and then compete with other, what we call fellow node owners or miners, to put the block so that you can earn Bitcoin. So one thing you should understand, that in the decentralized economy, in the blockchain economy, the participants get all the benefits. So there's no central party, right? There's a mechanism of distributing reward, and they all go to people who are equals, right? So, and then every blockchain has a token. So Bitcoin is a blockchain, and BTC is its coin, right? So that is why is that, is because the miners, the people who are making network possible, need to get rewarded, and they can get rewarded in terms of that token or that coin. And typically how that happens is, there is like total supply, typically put in the code of that particular chain. Like Bitcoin has 21 million. And then as miners compete to put blocks and earn Bitcoins, they earn Bitcoins, and the outstanding supply continues to increase, and number of Bitcoins to be issued in future continue to decrease. Now, to make sure it goes on forever, the blockchains also employ a concept called, halving, for example. So every 4 years, Bitcoin will say that the reward for adding a block is going to become half, right? So that way it continues for infinite period of time. It never ends. And it also reflects in the demand, it puts the, uh, if I put it that way, buy pressure on that asset, because now that asset is becoming even more rare, right? So that is happening with Bitcoin. Every 4 years, they say, okay, now onward, you will get only half the amount of Bitcoins you used to get to add a block, right? And then lastly, wallets. Wallets are your software components where you can store these digital assets. So there are plenty of Bitcoin wallets that you can, download and start storing your, Bitcoin on it. The way these wallets work, they register you on the chain itself as, let's say, a house in the world or in a particular locality. It knows that this house has this address, and any money to be sent to that address is sent, automatically, right? So wallets are nothing but collection of addresses, right, where people know that they can send funds. All right. So now this is also important to understand that here are the key entities in an ecosystem, blockchain ecosystem, right? So there are simple blockchains. So simple blockchains are like Bitcoin. So these blockchains don't really serve anything outside of what their use case is. So Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, medium of exchange, and a store of value. So you can use Bitcoin as, paying stuff. You can, at some point we were promised we can buy Tesla with Bitcoin. You can, pay for stuff with Bitcoin, or you can keep Bitcoin like you keep gold and say, okay, gold is going to appreciate in the next 10 years. Bitcoin is the same way. I'm going to keep 2 Bitcoins. Maybe Bitcoin goes to $1 million each, right? So store of value as well as medium of exchange, right? So there are blockchains which are simple blockchains just doing one purpose, like Bitcoin, Stellar, Ripple. All three are, frontline cryptocurrencies. Then the blockchain platforms. So imagine, what we just discussed about a charity blockchain, right? And I have a business idea of running a charity blockchain, but I don't want to put a lot of time and energy and 3 years of like making my chain, successful, creating a community around that and all of that. I have a good idea. I just want a platform where I can, in no time, leverage the power of blockchain and get my product out. So the blockchain platforms allow you to do that. And that's why you might have heard about Ethereum. Ethereum, if you ask me, in my personal opinion, is 10 times more important than Bitcoin, or maybe 100 times, because Ethereum did what Bitcoin did not. So Ethereum is a cryptocurrency, as well as it's a platform where anybody can go and harness the power of blockchain. So in 5 minutes, you can go and I can go and create a Pavan token and Pavan blockchain on Ethereum, right? And I get every feature of Ethereum blockchain for me, so that now I can focus on the business logic, the real business, not as much on the, creating blockchain, running nodes, because Ethereum is already running, thousands of nodes. There is a huge community already for it. All I need is create a new token, run my business on it, and, just do business development. That's all I need. So these blockchain platform, basically, they allow you to create almost like a blockchain in 5 minutes. They allow you to declare everything like, hey, there are only going to be so many tokens or coins for my blockchain. And then you can develop UIs on top of that. You can develop sophisticated business case logic on top of that. So Ethereum right now is running thousands of applications on it, and which are not centralized. Like people like me, I have a big business idea of, starting a charity project. I will just decide whether I want to run it on Ethereum, Solana, Polkadot, ICP, Avalanche, and they're like 7, 8 frontline chains like Ethereum. I just pick one and I start coding, and I don't have to really build a blockchain. I just need to register my token as a smart contract on those, and I can then focus on application development, not on blockchain development, basically. So blockchain platforms are changing the world. So Ethereum right now is already all everywhere, right? So I don't know if you heard about projects like Audio. So Audio is basically, I think it's a threat to many of these music centralized music distributors. It is coming in a big way. It already has such a big market share, and it's running on Ethereum. So what Audius team did, they said, okay, we're going to compete with these big players, but we want to keep it decentralized. We want to pass all the benefits directly to the artist. So if I'm a listener, I listen to music and all I pay directly goes to the artist. There's nobody in between, right? So it became very popular. You guys should search for it. It's called Audius and token name is Audio. What they did, they just started the token on Ethereum chain, and they basically focused on the application business designing part, and everything else, the heavy lifting of blockchain, was already in Ethereum, right? So that's one example. There are plenty of examples. I'm going to go into stuff later on in a few minutes. So then the third category of entities are what they call distributed apps, DApps. So like I said, the blockchain platforms provide you the foundational blockchains where you can build on top of, right? So you don't have to create a blockchain. You just decide about your token and then go leverage Ethereum, Solana, Polkadot, etc. Now distributed apps are apps like what you want to create, a charity app or a music app or Facebook kind of app on top of that. So we call them decentralized applications because they're decentralized. Nobody owns them. You deploy them on a blockchain, right? So typically they have UI that talks to blockchain, and blockchain is run by miners and all that. So I talked about one decentralized app, Audio, because it is easy to connect to. Here I've listed a couple of more. So Chainlink is an interesting project, a very, very, I would say it's, some of these are going to be Microsoft and Facebook's and, IBMs of the world in 2-3 years, when people realize what they're doing. Chainlink is one of those. Chainlink is basically bringing off-chain data onto the chain. So how, let's say sports people bet, and then that betting information is not available on Ethereum, let's say, right? But somebody wants to build an application, a decentralized application on Ethereum. So Chainlink, what they do is they connect blockchains to the real world. So it's a price feed, it's a betting data about sports, it's something else. They basically bring the real world data on the blockchain, and they're already like used by thousands of applications worldwide, right? So they themselves are categorized as decentralized app. Same as Filecoin, it allows you, cloud storage, without having to go for Amazon or, Microsoft. So it's a decentralized version of file storage. So they run on Ethereum as a decentralized app. And Chainlink itself has I think about 2 billion. I don't remember the recent figure. Already like 2 billion kind of market cap. So they are big and they run on Ethereum. Then wallets. So the way wallets work, like I explained briefly earlier, you can store any digital assets on your wallet. Now, every chain has its own way of functioning, right? So some wallets may say, okay, we only allow you to store assets that run on Ethereum. In technical terms, those assets are called ERC20 assets, right? Some wallets may say we allow you to store everything, right, across these three chains, for example, right? Some wallets might be dedicated to just storing Bitcoin, right? Because, the question that was asked earlier, like how custody and everything works in the crypto space, you can store things in the wallets, software wallets, which are basically software components, or there are hardware wallets as well that allow you to go to have your digital assets in the cold storage as opposed to hot storage. Hot storage is, you're always connected to the network. If chain is not strong enough, you might get hacked. The cold wallets are basically, they isolate your holdings outside of the chain. So unless you connect them back and bring those assets back, nobody can access your assets basically. So hardware wallets, software wallets are both very popular, and wallets don't support all digital assets, from get-go. They target, different wallets target what they allow to support, because there is coding involved in order to enable which blockchain-based assets they will store. Lastly, a big component of blockchain ecosystem, crypto ecosystem, is decentralized exchange. So crypto's whole foundation is that there shouldn't be a middleman. Like, so how people trade crypto then? They can't just drop stuff on each other, right? So just like centralized exchanges work, just like, let's say Coinbase is a centralized exchange for crypto, works very similar to equity exchanges, where, somebody goes and says, okay, I want to buy so much of Bitcoin, and somebody's selling Bitcoin a certain price, and then there's a price match. You can either put a limit order, or you can buy from the market, so that is a centralized exchange. That is not the promise of crypto. The promise of crypto is that we are not going to pay to centralized exchanges. We want to pay to people themselves. So what they have done, they have come up with idea of decentralized exchange, and Uniswap is the biggest decentralized exchange, that everybody uses. So what this does is that you can go to these decentralized exchanges, and you can say, I'm putting $50,000 and $50,000 worth of Bitcoin in what we call pool. So BTC hyphen USD pool, let's say. And you have to go for a crypto asset, so it becomes USDT or USDC, which is a crypto version, stable coin they call it, crypto version of USD. And you can say, okay, I'm bringing in $100,000 worth of liquidity to BTC USDT pool on this particular decentralized exchange. And then you bring in liquidity, and people will come, and the buyers will say, okay, I want to buy one Bitcoin out of this. They buy Bitcoin, pay in USDT in the exchange pool. Now you have more USDT, less Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's price will go up automatically, right? So it operates on, X into Y equal to K kind of formula. So, multiplication of both assets is a constant at all points. But if one asset is in demand, the price of that asset goes up, because people are buying that asset and selling the other one, right? Basically. So decentralized exchanges pass the brokerage fees to whoever is providing the pool liquidity, which is people like us. So in other words, Coinbase keeps that brokerage fee, but decentralized exchanges pass that on to you if you're providing liquidity to the pool. So here I've listed a number of projects that, just to bring the point that it's not about Bitcoin. Here is the real power of blockchain. And all of these are already running businesses, right? These are decentralized blockchains already running businesses. I'll take maybe 2-3 examples real quick, right? So LivePeer, LPT, if you look at row which says video processing, I think it's the 6th one from the top. So what LivePeer does is, so they realize that video processing is very expensive. So YouTube, you know, you upload a video and it takes a lot of time for that video to process to a form where you can start distributing URLs. And the reason that happens is because of they have to do transcoding and a lot of other stuff on the video so that it is, you know, optimized for the resolution of the screen you want to look at, and also for different other, you know, optimization. Now, what Lightyear did, they said that, okay, this is a sequential step. So YouTube is doing it. They have to put it in some queue, like there are millions of videos or maybe thousands, who knows, that are in the queue. And as fast as YouTube is, you know, it is taking time to process that queue. So blockchain is the answer, because now you can have millions of people provide their computing power to you, and the queue will be gone very quickly. So that's the idea Lightyear came up with. You guys should look into this project. It's amazing project. So what they allow is they say, okay, you know, you bring in the video websites, you bring in LPT tokens, which is the utility of the token, park your tokens with us, and we will let you harness the power of blockchain, where you can process the videos in like 100 time and cost of what YouTube does. So these people are likely going to be YouTube killer at some point, and it's not just one project, a couple of more trying to do the same thing. Theta is very similar. Theta is like already like in billions of dollars. So that's one example. The other example I would like to take here is, I don't know if I have here. So Render is another example. Now you guys know Facebook is going into metaverse. Who can sustain that kind of processing when every kid is now going to be in metaverse doing graphics? Nobody can imagine how much GPU power it will require to process that much of graphics content. Amazon, AWS chokes on their own Prime Day, right? So they don't have infinite capacity. So what will really solve this problem is blockchain, because blockchain opens up computing power of millions of users, right? So if you don't use your computer at the night, you can say, okay, in the night, I give it to, you know, that project is called Render, which is helping that. So I'm giving it to Render, and Render will open up that capacity to whoever wants to use it, right? So Render will then have gaming provider on the other end, you know, Facebooks of the world, you know, Decentraland, whatever metaverse providers are. So Render will say, come utilize our platform, because our platform connects you to millions of these users who are letting you use their capacity, you know, high GPU capacity, that some of it will be infinite, and you will never run out of capacity to run your highly graphic rich, you know, computing, right? So a couple of examples from there. I have audience here that I already talked about. A lot of work happening in the identity space as well. So again, disclaimer, you know, these are great projects, but not an investment advice. So I wanted to just flash this picture here, because I just want you guys to understand that people just run after Bitcoin. There is whole Web 3.0 stuff that is happening right now. And you can see many of these. So first of all, this has all the categories you can imagine, right? And then it has from where in traditional 2.0 world, what are the applications providing value, and what are the applications that are coming up in Web 3.0. So it's a shocking picture, because people are still thinking Bitcoin, Ethereum. And in the meantime, just so much work has happened that these players on the right-hand side of each of these columns, they are really running businesses that is going to displace, or at least have significant market share from the people on the left. So for example, you know, Upwork and, you know, a couple of more freelancing sites, they allow you to, you know, post jobs and allow you to find jobs. Now there is, you know, a new decentralized application for that, DApp for that, called BTRST. I think it's called, I don't know the full form. So BTRST is the token. So that allows you to do that in the decentralized way. So point is that you have use case in a working application for pretty much everything you have in the traditional space. So Facebook, Minds, YouTube, LPT, like you can pretty much think of an application which is provide banks, DeFi protocols like Avi and Compound, they give you 10% interest on your money, right? So you can think of one company in the traditional world, you will have 10 already in the decentralized one, and they are coming very, very quickly to run the business. Like charity self, what you talked about, the way charities are run today, it'll be very different how they will be run in future. So just wanted to flash this picture to give you the scale of how the world is going to change with Web 3.0. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because I want to leave time for questions. So there are two kinds of blockchains. One is proof of work. So miners get rewarded when they do a lot of computing and show they deserve the reward, right? So the example I took, the next block, whoever does the calculation first will get to add the block and get the rewards of Bitcoin or whatever chain it is. Then proof of stake is very different, very less energy consuming. Proof of stake is basically where you say, okay, I have more tokens, so I get to get more right to put the next block, right? So more tokens you have, more coins you have of that network, the more ability you have, more chances you have to put, the next block, basically. So I just want to keep some time for questions, so I would not go in the legal landscape as it is. I think people are aware that SEC have issues with tokens, being categorized as securities. So sometimes they try to hide equity kind of raise, under the umbrella of tokens, because obviously there are no regulations for tokens, complete regulations for tokens right now.